Hi, Sabrina.
Hi, how are you?
Good, good. I want to let you know we have had a little change of presenters. So on the outreach form, when you had wonderful. Did you want to start off with any introductions or should I just launch in?
Oh, no, feel free to just take over. You got it.
Okay, sounds great. Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Christina Kelly-Lecluse. I'm a clinical social worker at the University Counseling Center. So it's really nice to be with you here today. Just wanted to make note that in our PowerPoint presentation, we were originally going to have two of our psychology students, our interns, do this presentation, but there was a scheduling conflict. So I'm here with you. So a little bit of a last minute change, but it's nice to be able to be with you. I heard from Vanessa, it sounded like she has another meeting that she has to attend to right now. So she's going to try to attend or look at the recorded version. I am wondering for Joseph and Yasmin, would it be possible for you to turn on your screens? It's always lovely to actually be able to interact with people face to face. And I do have some interactive exercises for us to do during today's presentation. I also understand that sometimes it's not possible, that there's a variety of reasons. But if it would be possible to have you turn on your screens, it would be lovely to see you.
Hello, everyone. Yes, I can do that. I will just take a couple of minutes. I'm on the go, so I will get into a room, a quiet space, and turn on the video.
That sounds wonderful. Okay, thank you, Joseph. And I'm afraid we might have lost Yasmin. I don't see her now, but we can go ahead and continue on with our presentation and make good use of our time today. Okay, so for today's presentation, we're really wanting to talk about mindfulness concepts and mindfulness practice, particularly as to how it applies to work-life integration and this concept of work-life balance. So we have a few activities to both put into practice, a little mindfulness exercise, and also to be able to discuss in more length what the work-life role is that you might have, which ones might be challenging for you, and some strategies for managing self-care. As this is a small group, I want to very much invite you all to ask questions, make comments, share your own experiences and observations, as I think that always makes workshops so much more interesting and ways for us to learn together. Okay, so when thinking about mindfulness practice, it's kind of become a buzzword in our culture today. Where there's a lot of talk about mindfulness. And of course, mindfulness practice has its roots in a lot of Eastern traditions going back thousands of years. So this is, while it's become more popular in our mainstream American culture, we very much want to recognize where some of the origins come from, which are more from Eastern religious and meditative practices. But I am curious to know if, for those who are in the room, what might be your own experience with mindfulness practice and or your own understanding of it?
Well, I understand mindfulness as being like in the present, being like aware of yourself and then your surroundings and trying to just connect with the moment in time.
Beautifully stated, Sabrina, beautifully stated. Yes, that's right. So a huge component of mindfulness is coming back to the here and now, coming back to the present moment. It really is quite remarkable if one were to just do an observation of where our mind takes us throughout the course of a day. There's so much of our mind that races forward designing ways to solve problems in the future, concerns about what's going to happen tomorrow, what's going to happen several years from now, or obsessing and thinking about all that has happened in the past, and concerns about, did I say the right thing? Did I do the wrong thing? You know, a real fixation on the past. And then, of course, what we tend to miss is what's happening in the here and now. What's happening right here, right now. So an important component of mindfulness practice is, in fact, to bring your awareness back to the present moment. And so on this slide here, we have some good suggestions about ways to do that. So in thinking about what does it mean to bring your awareness to the present moment, as you can see on this slide, here's what we're suggesting of how to help with that, some practical tools for doing that. So first of all, the what is it involved? Well, a key component of mindfulness practice, and I really want to emphasize the term practice, meaning it's an ongoing, active process. It's not a checkbox that you just check or light switch you turn on and off. It's actively involved. And one key component to that active involvement is, as much as possible, this non-judgmental attitude. So this process of becoming aware of what's happening in the present moment, and in a way, it's kind of like trying to separate yourself in the observation. So there's a non-judgmental element to it, observing what is in fact happening right now. And what you're observing are things like on a cognitive realm. So what are you observing about your thoughts? What are you observing about your emotions? What are you observing about your behavior? What do you notice in your body? We are very quick to focus. When we focus on these things, we can oftentimes start labeling and judging them. And so part of mindfulness practice is trying to step away from that evaluation and that judgment, and instead observing without judgment. Hard to do, but again, it's part of the practice, and the more you do it, the easier it becomes. I also like to throw in the word curiosity when explaining mindfulness practice, like to be able to have some curiosity about ourselves, about what we're doing, what we're thinking, what we're feeling. Like, that's interesting. I was getting ready to do this presentation, and I'm observing that I'm feeling a rush of energy running through my body. That's interesting. I'm observing that I'm getting excited, and I notice emotionally I'm feeling interested in connecting with people. Okay. Maybe it's in getting ready to defend your thesis. Maybe it's getting ready to spend a day doing research. Then what do you observe? I feel lethargic. I feel unmotivated. I notice in my thoughts a recurring theme of, I don't know if I can do this. Can I do this? What if I get it wrong? You know, what are you observing? So that's an integral part of being able to notice what's happening in the present moment. And as we are observing ourselves in that present moment, it actually allows us to take a little step back from getting so caught up in the thoughts and the emotions. I often describe to my clients how, you know, our thoughts and our feelings can sometimes feel like this raging river that just sucks us under, right? And before we know it, we are being rushed around by the current of the river, bashed against boulders, thrown against the sides, and it can feel so disorienting. The practice of mindfulness is about like raising your head above the pull of the river, the current. It doesn't mean that the current necessarily goes away. But what it does mean is it allows you to observe what's happening in the current. And with that observation, it does allow you some opportunities to figure out what to do with it, as well as how to be able to manage it. So that's an integral part of mindfulness practice. Hello, Joseph. Thank you so much for hopping online or hopping on and turning on your camera. It's good to see you.
Oh, thank you. Sorry, I had to kind of change from my mobile onto the computer. Yeah.
No worries, no worries. Just glad that you're here and certainly welcome your participation. Okay, so we've talked a little bit now about mindfulness practice, and I'm going to invite you to actually engage in an exercise, a mindfulness exercise practice. So to do this, I'll invite you to, first of all, get comfortable in your seat. And one of the things as we're observing ourselves, this mindfulness practice of bringing your awareness to the present moment, is observing how are you in fact seated. So sometimes what can happen as we go about our day, I certainly notice this for myself, is as the day goes on and my stress levels can go up, I kind of start to do a little bit of a hunch over, sometimes my shoulders start raising up to my ears. And not only is that physically compromising for myself, but it's interesting, I can't also catch a good breath. I can't catch a deep breath if I'm doing this. So with a good mindfulness activity is simply noticing your posture. And as you're able to straighten your spine, so you're sitting back in your chair, if you can lower your shoulders, this will also help open up your chest so that you can take a deep breath. And I want to invite you to plant both feet firmly on the floor so you can feel that stability of the floor beneath you. So as you feel comfortable, you could gently close your eyes or invite you to just relax your gaze. You can pick a certain point to focus on as we engage in this exercise together. So as you have yourself situated in your chair, shoulders down, feet firmly planted on the floor, I'm going to invite you now to take a few intentional breaths in. And as you breathe in, I'm going to invite you to breathe in deeply and slowly, filling your lungs with air. So let's start in here, the count of 3. 1, 2, and 3. And feel the air fill your lungs. Hold the breath and gently exhale through the mouth. Good. And again, we're approaching this without judgment, without a worry about this being the right way or the wrong way. Just simply noticing what it feels like to take a moment to stop and breathe. And let's do another deep and slow breath in. And hold the breath and gently exhale. Good. As you feel, hopefully, a sense of some release of tension occurring in your body, stay present, listening to my voice, and do a gentle observation of your thoughts. So take a moment to step aside and notice, without evaluation, without judgment, what are you observing that's running through your mind right now? Simply notice them. It's not a wrong or a right. You're observing them as you would a cloud in the sky. And then we'll do another deep breath in. And hold the breath. And gently exhale. Good. Now I want to shift your awareness to your physical sensations into your body. You may notice, what does it feel like as you're practicing these breath exercises? Notice if you experience any discomfort, stiffness, and pain in your body right now. As much as you can, try not to judge it. Simply notice it. If it becomes too uncomfortable, I invite you to shift your attention towards an area of the body that feels more comfortable. And observe how all sensations rise and fall. They shift and they change, moment to moment. Good. Let's take another deep and slow breath in. And pause. And gently release. Good, good. Now I'm going to invite you to shift your awareness to observe any and all emotions that you might be experiencing right now. And see if you can notice those emotions without evaluating them. Let's just name them. Maybe you feel some tiredness. Maybe there's a sense of stress. Maybe you're feeling energized. Maybe it's more of a neutral feeling. Whatever you observe, just notice it. And interestingly, you might notice that as you observe, the emotions start to shift and change. Good. And let's do another deep and slow breath in. And hold the breath and exhale. Good. And lastly, let's just take a moment to notice, what do you observe about your spirit or your energy right now? How does that inform you? Again, without judgment, without labeling, just notice that energy level. Good, and let's do a last deep breath in. And fill the lungs and gently exhale. Good. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes, starting off with a soft gaze, and you might want to proceed with awareness into the very next moment, observing what's around you, where you're located, returning again to an observation of your body being in the chair, and bringing your attention back to our virtual space together. Good. So tell me, how was that experience for you? What was that like? If you'd like to share any of your observations.
I think the breathing exercises have been something I've been suggested in the past. If you're going up on stage to present, or you have something that's overwhelming. But sometimes what is tough is that if you have a task at hand, though maybe your heart wants to like calm down, but the brain is always thinking about the next thing. So yeah, that's kind of a challenge, because even right now when I was like coming down and trying to focus, I'm thinking about the next task in the next hour, the next experiment to do, things like that.
Yes. Oh, Joseph, you describe it so well. And oh my gosh, welcome to our human experience, right? It's so true. It's so hard to be in the present, and our brains are problem-solving machines. So they are constantly wired to be like, okay, this is my next challenge. And so I've got to be ready for it. I got to start problem solving with it, So please know I hear you. And part of this engaging in mindfulness practice is about teaching the brain the importance. And I'd suggest our nervous system really is an integral part of this. is the importance of calming down, of allowing yourself the gift of being here and now. Ironically, of course, that really is all we literally have control over, here and now. And so even if you're working in the here and now to affect your future, what you do here and now will in fact impact that future. So being able to do this mindfulness exercise of coming back to the present moment is to help remind your brain, yeah, I know I'm worried about the future, but I've got to do this now so I can be effective in the future moment. So good. Sabrina, any experiences you would like to share?
I did notice, well, I think it was good to have that amount of time. It wasn't just like a quick take a breath with me. It was like, it was an extended amount of time. And so I could feel my emotions changing within that amount of time. Like when you said to the part with noticing your emotions, I was like, I'm anxious, I'm stressed, I'm tired. And then I was like, I'm actually really comfortable right now and I feel good about being here right now.
That's beautiful. I love that. I love that. What a great observation. Thank you. One of the things that I think we oftentimes forget or maybe incorrectly assume is that if we're experiencing one emotion, it's almost as if to negate the others. When in fact, the reality is our human experiences, we're multifaceted, we're complex creatures. We not only experience multiple emotions, but we can also hold multiple emotions. So sometimes what can happen is, difficult or more challenging emotions such as stress or anxiety or anger or depression, it can feel like it's all consuming and it can feel like it's immutable, like it's forever. But even in this simple little exercise, what you're pointing to, Sabrina, is not only the complexity that we can hold multiple emotions, like I'm sure you were anxious and stressed, I have no doubt about that. And in the present moment, right here and right now, you had a little respite of, actually, I'm feeling pretty good. So it's helpful to notice that, right? Because sometimes when we're like, oh my God, I'm so stressed or I'm so anxious and this is the way it's going to be forever. Actually, it's not. We forget that, right? So good. Fabulous. Thank you both. Such fabulous observations, so insightful. Any other comments about that before we move on? All right. So one of the things that we wanted to talk about with this presentation today is, of course, how we can integrate mindfulness into our day-to-day lives. How do we integrate this into our work, into our relationships, into even our relationships with ourselves? So part of this is, again, putting into practice as you move about your day. I would invite you to take a look at, sometimes I even encourage my clients to set a little reminder on their phone, to pause, to take a moment to say, all right, what am I noticing in myself right now? What am I feeling? How is my body? Where is my breath? What emotions? What thoughts? And can I be present with what's happening in the here and the now? Can I be present with the people I'm interacting with? Joseph, you mentioned, are you in the lab? Are you in the sciences? Yeah. And so, I'm thinking about, am I present with my lab mates as we're talking about this right now? Am I present with the experiment that I'm conducting right now? So this idea of being a gentle reminder to ourselves, truly, and I'm sure this comes as no surprise to you, but when we're able to do this, we actually are so much more effective. Oh my goodness, we are so much more effective. And ultimately, wouldn't we like to do that with our work responsibilities, right? Wouldn't we like to show up and be present? Good. So when we're talking, and we're moving a little bit more now into talking about the work-life balance, as this slide indicates, there is no exact formula, y'all, about achieving this. So it's not an end state. It's not I do this and I do that and then ding, I have work-life balance. It doesn't work like that, unfortunately. And maybe if Joseph discovers that magical formula in his lab, he will share the results with us. But I have not yet found it. So what we emphasize here is that it's active, it's a verb, it's a process. It's not an ultimate destination. And so some days are going to be a lot better than others. Some days are going to be like, whoa, that was not a great balance. That was me constantly stressing about tomorrow. But I want to invite you again with that mindfulness idea of approaching yourself with compassion, with some kindness, some forgiveness. So if we have that in mind, let's talk a little bit about healthy ways to manage life roles in general. So this comes from a study done by Hall in 1972. I recognize that's old and a little bit out of date. And nonetheless, the information that was gleaned from this study, I think actually is really quite relevant to us today. So in Hall's study, he was actually looking at the role behavior in college-educated women and really examining what type of roles did they, by roles I mean both personal and work life roles, and how did those different roles play out with life satisfaction and with this concept of a healthy work-life balance. And so even though it was done a while ago, it still, I think, is very pertinent to all of us today. So I wanted to walk you through these, the results of his findings, and then we'll do a little exercise to be able to discuss how that might apply for us today. So interestingly, there were three main roles that came about in Hall's study. This type 3 role is what he labeled the coping reactive role behavior. And so with this, and I have to say, and Joseph, I would love to hear your opinion on this. I have to say that I think actually a lot of graduate students try to approach their graduate work under the premise of this label or this type of coping behavior. Not because it's any malintention on students' part. I think it's actually the institution that expects you to do this. So what is this? Well, it's the do-it-all. It's the super person syndrome. It's the no problem. You tell me one more responsibility to do? Sure, I can do that. So there's like this idea of all expectations that are put on a student, or for Sabrina and I as staff members, it's like, yeah, sure, I can do that. Oh, you want me to sign up for yet another committee? For Joseph, oh yeah, you need me to do more research on another experiment that's not related to my main thesis. Sure, I can do that. So it's just this sense of, it's very, in many ways, a lack of a conscious decision-making process. And it oftentimes comes with a feeling of pressure that you have to do this. Like that's the expectation. And if you didn't, you would meet with disapproval, with criticism. And, in Joseph's case, I'm sure there's a concern about, well, how is this going to impact my future academic career? How is this going to affect my ability to graduate, right? So it's this kind of super person, Superman, Superwoman idea, and it's not realistic. Tell Joseph, go ahead. I see you're going to say something.
So oftentimes you read and you see mindfulness, awareness, talks, like just saying, being able to say no, or as as the definition says, not being in like falling into the trap of do it all. The solution I wanted is, or rather, what's the solution? Yeah, so to put it in a simple way, what's the solution? Because I think this is what I read and I hear. So it's like, yes, I know, but as you rightly said, suppose I have like 5 experiments and there's one that matters the most. How do you say no to the 4 others?
Absolutely. No, that is a very valid question. And I want to acknowledge, even as we're dialoguing about this, it's messy. Oh my gosh, Joseph, it's messy. So As I said earlier, we don't have that magic solution yet, but there are some things that we can glean, especially from Hall's study here. So beautiful. Okay, let me explain the other two roles, because in these other two roles, it starts to hint at what are some possible solutions. What are some possible strategies for managing this? So in type 2, what we have is the personal role redefinition. What does that mean? Well, if you notice on the slide, it's talking about really kind of more of an internal shift, an internal change in your own expectations for yourself. So what it's looking at here is it's not changing the environment expectations. As of yet, those have still stayed the same, but it's really taking a look at yourself and what are you expecting, and is there an ability to shift that? So for example, there's examples here on the slide of something a little more simple, but like even, okay, how clean does my house have to be? Does it have to in fact be picture perfect? Or could it be okay that I don't vacuum 3 times a week? Can I vacuum once a week? You know, would it be possible to give myself permission to actually get 8 hours of sleep each night, instead of expecting myself to work until I'm absolutely exhausted and I get everything done on my to-do list, and then I only catch 2 hours of sleep? So it means shifting that internal expectation where you're starting to set perhaps a little more realistic expectations that involve taking better care of yourself. One of the things, and Joseph, I would love to hear your opinion about this. Sabrina, as you work with graduate students, your opinion about this as well. One of the things that I work on with my grad students in counseling quite a bit is this internal expectation of perfectionism. I have to be perfect. I have to do things perfectly. And it goes hand in hand with imposter syndrome. Like if I don't do things perfectly, then my advisor, my PI, my professors are going to find out that I somehow magically snuck under the radar into this grad program, and people are going to find out I'm a fraud, and they're going to find out I don't know what I'm doing, like I don't have what it takes. And with this often comes this very rigid form of thinking, this rigidity of all or nothing. Like I either do the experiment perfectly, or I know exactly how to write this paper, or I know how to do my research, or I'm a failure. Like I shouldn't even be here. I should just drop out. So it's this either or, black or white, all or nothing thinking. So curious to hear both of your experiences with that and your thoughts.
Yeah, I think that that's a huge thing that we see in graduate school as a whole. And it's hard to see like what is like the root cause of that or how to solve it, because I think it is across the nation, especially with this age of people, this age group, with it being higher education or like master's and PhDs programs are becoming more and more common or like necessary to have on a resume. And so it's becoming more of like, you have to do this and not necessarily like, I want to do this. And so I think, I don't know, I've seen it a lot, and it's all over the place, and it's kind of hard to fix it, I guess.
It is. Yeah, thank you, Sabrina. Yeah, so it's a commonality experience. Yeah, a lot of pressure, and pressure from the institution.
Yeah.
Joseph, I'm curious to hear your experience with this.
I mean, I agree with everything that Sabrina said. The only thing that I still, I mean, you did rightly say that there's no solution like a magic fix at the moment. But the only thing that I try to find out is, suppose, for example, the 8 hour sleep idea. So suppose you decide, okay, I'm going to get good rest. But if the consequence of that is, say, you have a delayed experimental result and that will negatively impact you, how do you still sleep 8 hours? Because if you know that the outcome is going to be bad, then I don't think you'll be able to sleep the night before, and your mind will be like, oh, you have to do this, you have to do this. So my question is, okay, I have all these suggestions that are being suggested, very good. But if I know that if I do that suggestion exactly, the outcome will not be so great.
Yeah, great question. So I guess I'll do a little gentle challenge in saying, even in that question, Joseph, I think there's a little bit of black or white, like it has to be this or that. So what I would suggest is that we try to open up into looking at complexity and the shades of gray. So for example, absolutely, if you have an experiment that it's going to be concluded at 2 a.m. and you're like, I have to be there at 2 a.m. Like, then you have to be there at 2 a.m. Right. So I think what we want to avoid doing, though, is looking at you being at the lab at 2 a.m. for weeks on end, for day after day after day. So if there's the occasional 2 a.m., oh, that sucks and it's terrible and it's awful and you're going to be exhausted the next day. And no, you're not going to get your 8 hours. But if that is happening occasionally, maybe that's part of what you roll with. I would be concerned if the expectation either by you or say your PI was like, yep, Joseph, you need to be here till 2 a.m. every night. Too bad. That's what it is. Ooh, that's going to then lead to some significant problems. Does that make sense? So the idea is it allows for flexibility and ability to adjust to maybe an immediate need, but we don't want it to become a pattern. Go ahead.
So the way I'm interpreting is look for patterns. So if it's a once in a while thing,
Right.
that's something normal, but
Correct.
tending to be repetitive, that's like a red flag.
Correct. That's exactly right. That's right. And so this leads very nicely to our next and what has found actually to be the most effective role redefinition, and it's called the structural role redefinition. And so notice that this is about combining both a change in internal expectations and working with your external environment, so that it's a combination of internal and external that helps to create a better work-life balance. For example, here, instead of, let's say if somebody was saying like, I am going to be the perfect grad student, and I'm going to be the perfect parent, and I'm going to be the perfect employee, and that is what I expect of myself. That's that type 1 that we talked, or sorry, that type 3 that we talked about originally. And this is saying like we're letting go and changing the expectation of rigidity, perfectionism. We're not only changing the expectations internally, though, we're also negotiating. We're talking with people in our environment to help us with this. So on the slide here, you'll see some examples. For example, you bring in your partner if it's about family stuff, like, hey, partner, can you help vacuum the house on Saturdays and I'll mop. I'm not going to do it all myself. I'm not going to expect the house to be perfect. And I'm going to invite you to collaborate with me on the joint goals. Let's look at some of the work responsibilities. So for example, if you have a series of experiments coming up, and then your PI asks you, Joseph, to present at a conference on the same week that all your experiments are going to be coming up with results. Forgive my lack of terminology. I'm obviously not saying things right, but I hope you get the gist of it. So in this type 1 structural role redefinition, what you would do is, one, internally, you would say to yourself, I'm not Superman. I can't do all the things all the time for everyone. So I can't present at the conference and manage my lab results all at the same time. So you become aware of that and you're consciously saying, okay, what could I do? How would I work with this? And then in this structural role redefinition, you would also bring out and coordinate with the people around you about how to be successful. So maybe it's talking to your PI and explaining, you know what, I've got these experiments due, and you've asked me to present at this conference. could you help me figure out how to make all of those things happen? Like, could there be a lab mate that could monitor the results of the experiment while you're presenting? Or could you present at the next conference because you have to be in the lab that week? But it's that idea of not just keep taking it on and expecting the impossible from yourself, but setting realistic expectations and then doing that negotiation. You know, for Sabrina, I don't know how that might look like in your work environment, but maybe your supervisor's like, Sabrina, not only do I want you to do GRADitude work or GRADitude week, but I also expect you to turn in the annual report for the last 6 months about how grad students are doing in their success rate. And you're like, oh my God, dude, I can't do everything. Like, I can't do your annual report and do GRADitude week all at the same time. So tell me your thoughts about this for both of you. What are your thoughts?
So my first thought is, I think that in an ideal scenario, we could negotiate those responsibilities and delegate some tasks, but I think a lot of younger people don't know how to do that. And like, I know for me, this, like, because I have had a recent experience where I was like, just had my work tasks piled up, and then asked to do more. And it's like, I don't know how to say no, because we also don't have the resources for someone else to take that on, or to, so it's like, if I don't do it, then it doesn't get done. And so then I feel the weight of that on me. So now it's like, okay, well, I guess I will have to do it then. So would you have any tools or tips and tricks for that?
Sure. And before I answer that, just a quick check-in with Joseph. Joseph, is that resonating with you as well? I mean, I know it's a different environment for you, but can you really, I see your head nodding a lot while Sabrina was talking.
Yes, because that's, I think, kind of a universal problem, is that if you are the only resource person and saying no is not an option, what other tools are available? Like, I know of friends or situations where, as I said, the reason from the start I was asking about the solution was, well, this, when sometimes I, not like a therapy this thing, but as just a friend counseling or motivating, they say, all your talk is beautiful, it's all positive, this is how I should do, I should, manage stuff, etc., etc. But the situation, the environment doesn't allow you to do that, so that's not possible. And sometimes I read about what is called toxic positive, I don't know, maybe I'm telling this completely wrong, but there's something called toxic positive motivation, or like, you tell someone to be in a situation that's not conducive, but you still have to say them to be in that because of lack of options. Sometimes I feel like I shouldn't be saying someone to be there, but also there are no options available. So yeah, everything that Sabrina said is that if there is no solution, or if you are the only person to do it, how do you navigate?
Yeah. So those are very good observations, and both of you are speaking to the reality of our human experience, right? Where we're sometimes faced with just these impossible tasks. And so Sabrina, you mentioned a really important component, and I want to highlight that because I do feel like it's an important strategy for solving these problems, which is effective communication and being able to learn communication skills about, particularly, I would suggest for both of you, and for all of us really, is abilities to negotiate and be able to speak with other people, especially when they are in a power differential over us, right? So be it PIs, be it supervisors or bosses, people in authority over us. And part of those communication skills, I think, and of course, I please know that I very much know that there are bosses and supervisors out there that being able to negotiate with them can be extremely difficult to do. I want to recognize that for sure. One of the things that I think can be beneficial in moving us outside of that type 3 role of trying to present ourselves as superhuman and saying yes to everything involves coming to our advisors, supervisors, PIs with you know what, let me be honest, and that involves a little bit of vulnerability. So I recognize that that's challenging. But here's what I've got going on today or this week, you know. And so when I'm asked to do yet this one more thing, could you help me figure out how will that happen? Given the amount of time that I have to dedicate to these things, I want to show up and I want to be responsible. I want to be successful. I know I'm just in hearing how both of you present yourselves here today. I know that you're both actively engaged in your work. You want to do well, and you want to do well by your responsibilities. I think communicating that to your supervisors, whoever they may be, implies and gives the very clear message of, I'm not trying to slack off. I really am not. I care about this. This is important to me. I do want to be successful and I want to give it my all. And yet, I'm also human. So could you help me problem solve and figure out together, how can we make this happen? What might be some ways of being creative and flexible in how we meet these demands? So it involves getting away from that, yes, bring it on, I can do it all the time because I'm superhuman. Because that is an unrealistic expectation for both yourself, and also it's not a realistic expectation for your supervisor to have of you. Does that make sense? Yes, Joseph, go right ahead.
I like the option of explaining and saying, but I wanted like a practical tip on how do you muster the courage to go to someone in authority and speak? Because what happens is maybe it's just me, like I plan like things to ask and I go in and blank out and I come back and ask like, oh, I didn't ask this. I should have asked this. Oh, I should have asked that. Or I didn't ask this.
Yeah.
So how do you, how do you like, okay, this is what I want to ask, this is what I want to say, go in and not like blank out.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful question. So one thing for you to know, first off, Joseph, is that notion of kind of blanking out, that indicates to me that your stress response has kind of skyrocketed. Because guess what happens when we get too stressed out? The part of your brain that's called the prefrontal cortex, it's this part that manages executive functioning, logical, analytical thinking, all the good stuff that you need for work and school, it goes offline when our stress levels skyrocket too high. Not helpful, right? Evolutionarily, there's a good reason for that. And that's a talk for another time that I would love to talk to you about. But for the purpose of answering your question, several things. One is I want to encourage you to calm your system down as much as you can prior to the meeting. So even that day, if you can do things that are helpful reducing stress, like good exercise, if you can, doing some deep breathing exercises, and then concretely writing down what exactly you need to talk to your advisor about. Then you bring that in with you to the meeting. Second strategy, I have had grad students email their advisor prior to the meeting and to say to them, here are the points that I need to make sure that we cover today. I really look forward to hearing your guidance and getting your suggestions on how to manage X, Y, and Z. And that way you have it not only with you, but they have it as well. And they might be able to even be thinking and problem solving ahead of time. So when you meet, there can be some coordinating of strategies to address the concerns. Thirdly, and this is, I think, an important point, Joseph, to please remember, and I fully understand the culture doesn't necessarily give you this message, but I want you to know that it is okay to not know everything. You're a student. You don't have the PhD yet. That's why you're here, right? Is you're studying. So it is okay to not know. It is okay to be confused or like, I don't know what direction to go in. When there can be for yourself to give yourself permission to not know, then when you can approach your advisor with, okay, I'm coming at this from a place of curiosity instead of anxiety of, oh my God, I should have known this. I should already know. I should have the PhD. But you got to remember, you're the student. You're not the one with the doctoral degree yet. That's who you're talking to. They should know, and that's why you're coming to them. That's their job, is to answer your questions. Your job is to have questions and to not know, because you're the student. Does that help a little bit?
Well, I don't know if like, like people like different people have different beliefs of spirituality and things like that, but this is something maybe it was meant to be told at this moment because I was like in that point of feeling like I should be knowing stuff, but you kind of clicked for me personally that point by saying it's okay not to know, because
Okay.
yeah, that's a reminder that I'm here to learn, and then it's the process of not knowing, which is why you're here to know what you don't know. So yeah, it
Beautiful.
hit me on a personal level, so thank you.
Oh, yay, Joseph. I love hearing that. Thank you for sharing that. Sabrina.
Yeah, I think sometimes we just, as humans, need that reminder. Even like when we were doing the breathing exercises and like having my eyes closed, it was my mind sometimes was like, I need to check my email. I need, what time is it? But like then having your voice just there was like, okay, no, I can trust that this is where I can just close my eyes and be in this moment. So I think it's nice to just have that reminder that of whatever we need. Like we know it, but you just need to be told it sometimes.
That's right. That's right. That's beautifully stated. Wonderful.
I also really liked the option to like email your supervisor beforehand, because I know like they should be more equipped to know what like other options or other resources there might be. So if they're more prepared for that, then I think that's usually a better outcome for both parties.
Makes a lot of sense, right? A lot of sense. Beautiful.
And
Wonderful, you all. Go ahead.
a last thing I wanted to say was, I mean, this is something you get told is to not compare, so that's a universal thing. But because Sabrina reinstated this, and this is something that we constantly see with the requirements now coming in. You need your 5 papers, you need your Nature publication, you need these awards, you need these grants, you need this, that. So it's human not to compare, but I love the strategies of writing, sending prior emails, making note of stuff. But in terms of the comparison part, any advice, tips, or strategies to stay composed rather than feeling, oh, he got a grant, I didn't get a grant. Oh, she published, I didn't publish. Like she did good, I didn't do great. Think, that angle.
Yeah, yeah. And again, a huge, please know, such a common experience, Joseph, for both undergrad and grad. I think the stakes feel a little higher in grad school too. So that there's that. But yeah, I would suggest here's where a mindfulness practice can be useful. Ultimately, what I hear you saying, Joseph, and I fully agree, it is not only very human for us to do the negative comparison of ourselves, but let's just name it, it's not helpful. It's just not helpful. It gets us stuck. So a couple of things. One, mindfulness practice is observing when you're doing it, like, I notice I'm doing that thing again. I'm comparing myself to my lab mates, and now I'm feeling highly anxious. Okay. Because as you notice it, it's raising your head above the pull of the current, right? Two, to remind yourself, each of you has your own unique experience with your own unique set of skills, your own set of how you're coming at this. So what is true for Joseph and how Joseph shows up in the world is not true for Sammy or Sally or Jane or Joe. Joseph is unique, and Joseph is not Sally. Joseph is Joseph. We need Joseph. So yay for Sally for having done her 5 papers already and published. Good for her. But you know what I believe firmly, Joseph, is that the world needs Joseph. We need you, because we already have Sally. So that's great. Yay for Sally. But we need Joseph. We need Joseph to be who Joseph is in the world, with the talents and skills that you bring. So Sally brings hers, yay, but we also need you. And so it's not useful to compare yourself to Sally, because we already have Sally. We need Joseph. Does that make sense? And an affirmation that you have a right to be here.
Perfect. Thank you so much. That, I mean, it's been, there have been general things, but personally, it was very reassuring, some of the things told. So I think I could have done many other things, but I'm glad I chose this 1 hour for this.
I'm so glad that you were here, Joseph. Such a joy to be able to talk with you. Thank you for sharing. Sabrina, thank you so much for the invitation to do this. I would love to do similar things with your graduate students in the future.
Yes, thank you so much. I think this was really helpful. I know it was helpful for me. It sounds like it was helpful for Joseph as well. And yeah, I think hopefully, I mean, I'll send out this recording to everyone that was registered, which was a lot of people. And so hopefully if they see like how interactive it was and how like individually helpful it was, then maybe we'll get more interest that way.
I would love that. You know, like Joseph brought up such great points today, and you know, we could do a future workshop on, say, communication skills and being able to try to have a good work-life balance when you're dealing with advisors and PIs and you know all the rest of that. We talk about imposter syndrome, perfectionism, you know, such of these common experiences. It would be lovely to have some more good conversations about these things.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so
Okay.
much for the presentation today. I'm really glad that you were able to do this, and it was really great.
It worked out so well. I had so much fun with you all. Thank you. Thank you. And I wish you both the best as we move forward with the end of the semester.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.